Welcome, 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 everybody, to another Sunday of When Black Women Gather. My name is Helen Higginbotham. I'm the founder of this organization that provides a platform for Black women and sometimes others, but primarily for Black women to come together to have conversations about us and things that are affecting us and that are important to us. And today we're going to be talking about working while Black, which I think is self-explanatory. As Black people, we have um, unique situations in the workplace. And it's not that we don't have situations that other people don't have as well, but I think the way that we um, are able to respond to them makes us very vulnerable. And what my colleagues and I are going to do today is talk to you about how to protect yourself in the workplace and to let you know. I hope if you don't walk away from this call knowing anything else, know that you are not a victim, that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you,
Mhm.
and that whatever you're dealing with, other people are dealing with it too. So just, this is a place for us to talk very openly and freely about what our experiences are. We will share that with you, and we will talk to you about our expertise and what has been our experiences, and we'll be looking for the same from you at the end of the call. So I'm just going to go around and let everybody introduce themselves. I'm Helen Higginbotham. You guys know me from When Black Women Gather. I think I don't talk much about being an attorney, but I am. And my focus in law school was labor and employment. And what I want you to walk away from this call understanding is that no matter your level of no matter what level you're at in a company, we still have the same issues. Whether you're in the C-suite or you're sweeping the floors, Black people have the same experiences in the workplace and expectations of how we're supposed to respond to stuff, which is not in our best interest sometimes. So I'm going to be talking to you from that perspective today. And so I'll just go. Tara, you're the first to my right. So go ahead, tell us who you are and what you do.
I am Tara Skinner, and I am in HR. I am actually in HR technology right now, but I have done payroll, benefits, everything, the whole gambit, employee relations, and I'll primarily be speaking to you about how to protect yourself from the HR perspective, what you should be doing to safeguard yourself and to also a little bit of the technology piece, and so that you have an understanding of what your companies are capable of when they're actually accessing and monitoring your computer systems. Uh,
Important. Go ahead, Stace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacie Jones. I am coming to you from Waldorf, Maryland. I am going to be talking to you about the some of the experiences that I've seen Black women have. And I've actually done research on this and obtained a doctorate from talking from women to women, executive level women about these experiences, primarily stemming from my own experience of being a Black woman that is typically surrounded by in predominantly white spaces, and how that experience affected me, and it led me to want to do research about it, which I did. And so I'll be able to share just a little bit of context, research that I've found, that I created to give you some more insights and to let you know that no, as Helen said, you're not alone, and it is real. The things that you're experiencing, it's not just in your head. And just to give you some validation and be able to have a platform for you all to share and discuss openly some of those experiences that you have, because it can be very, very lonely. So I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle Burgess, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Just Reset It. I also spent a lot of time in HR and inclusion and diversity, leader in corporate America. And I'll be bringing to you today really some things that I've learned more about how to be proactive and the things that you can do before you are either attacked or you're dissolved or you're faced with the loss even of your job. And then I'll definitely be sharing some personal experiences and things that I've seen happen to many other of our fellow Black women working.
For sure. So we're just going to talk. This will be a very what's the word I want to say? Just a casual conversation. So we're not rehearsed. We're just talking to you. So I just I'll just start out by saying that um, I'll talk to my peers. I'll just act like I'm interviewing you guys. How about that? So, when we talk about working while Black, what does that mean to any of you who just want to speak on it? What does that mean to you? What does that trigger for you?
For me, it's like a sense of it's a thing, right? It's like there's definitely a difference in the way that I see myself working and behaving at work than the way that I see my peers. And that whole experience of just recognizing that there's a difference in how other people are treated and the way that I'm being treated, right? Exactly, Erica, being guarded. And it's not only being guarded against those my white and brown peers, it's being guarded sometimes even against my own people because of the experiences that I've had engaging with them in leadership as well. So it's a very, as I said, a very lonely experience because you don't know whether, I don't know, I'll speak for myself, whether it's like an idea in my mind, or is this something that is actually happening, and there aren't things that you can talk about, you feel comfortable talking about a lot of the times. So it's a very I think guarded is a good word, and I'll be quiet and let somebody else speak.
Yeah, I think working while Black also means that there are different expectations, and some of those that we certainly we put on ourselves because we know that we have to exude excellence in anything that we do. We don't have that luxury to be average. We are held to a much higher standard than many of our peers. And then you factor in working, maybe you're the only, or maybe there's a couple or three, but either way, that experience is completely different because you don't have that opportunity to even relax because you're on this heightened sense all the time. You're on. There's no lukewarm, there's no off, you're on at the highest level that you have to be every single day, and it's exhausting.
Yeah. And for me, it also means that there are some opportunities that you feel that you should have that you miss out on because the expectations of others, they, for whatever reason, if you're not the mediocre white guy, you can't do the role. Definitely, since I spend a lot more time in tech, that is oftentimes the case. So they're looking for the mediocre white guy, and then when you come in and you're like, oh no, but he just told you everything wrong, this is really what you should be doing, they're shocked, stunned, and amazed that you even had an idea of what you're talking about. So sometimes it's the people not believing your expertise or your knowledge just because of who you are.
That's
Yeah,
true.
there's this.
Because mediocre men move up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they say fail forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that luxury. And as I was saying earlier, I think too, very often, it's not that other people aren't having the same experiences as us, but the difference is that we don't have the same resources to pursue the same recourse as others. And what do I mean by that? I look at Black people and how so many of us are ailing with stress related disorders, diabetes, cancer, what have you. And we have to ask ourselves at some point, how much of that is stemming from our situation in the workplace, right? How much stress related, like we bottle it up because we don't have an uncle that we can call and say, you know what, this is horrible, get me another job. Or we don't have the resources where we can just say, you know what, screw it, I quit, because we got kids to feed. It's hard to get another job. So today we just want to talk about, sadly, we have to be on the defensive from the beginning. So let's talk about that, ladies. Like, what are some things that we need to do before we even get into the workplace? And I I had a situation, I'm going through a situation right now, and these ladies have been a real source of support for me. And that's what Sister Girls are all about. So I really appreciate it. And I also should say that I met these ladies last year at a human resources event, and we made a pitch, and we will be doing a speaking engagement in November. And our topic is going to be working while Black, and it's going to be open to everybody who has an interest in this subject. So I'm excited about that, and I know they are too. So we just want to start. It's a big issue. It's a big issue because all of us, all of us, even people who are, if you're no longer in the workplace, you probably have kids or friends, and you're probably sick of hearing them talk about what's happening to them in the workplace, and you're so happy that you're retired. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what are some things that that we should be doing before we even get. And I don't know who, when you guys were talking with me, you talked about even from the time that you get the offer letter. So whoever wants to pick up there and just talk about what should we be doing before we even get to the workplace, from the interview process, what should we be doing?
Michelle, or do you want me to start?
That was Michelle who talked about
Okay,
that.
Tara, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so from the interview, just keep in mind that, make sure that first of all, your resume, just make sure that your resume is clear. There's a lot of there's a lot of resumes right now that are coming in. I mean, AI generates resumes that bullet points your skills. So if you need some help with that, make sure that your resume is clear, that your skills, lots of companies are hiring for skills right now specifically. So they're looking for the unicorn in the haystack. And if you have that skill, it'll pull you up to the top of the pile. So make sure that your skills are highlighted. Again, I know a lot of people are using AI to help pull out the skills based on their old resumes where it had lots of verbiage. So that might be a tool and a resource for you. But if you do use AI to do it, make sure you thoroughly check it and make sure that it doesn't have anything you don't want in there, or anything that it doesn't inflate anything that you may potentially have said that you have a little bit of knowledge of. So just make sure you're always doing that. And then also, once you get your offer, make sure that when you sign your offer, you're keeping that. Make sure you read through all of the documentation that they submit with it. Make sure that they're not, if they're asking to use your likeness and video, make sure if you're somebody who has intellectual property and that's included in your offer and things like that, that you understand the terms and the conditions of all of that before you sign the offer. Because once it's at will, so you can leave at any time. But once you're in the company, you're going to be less likely to do that, and you can't negotiate once you're in there. Not really. Not unless you're, some genius person who says, you just can't have access to this idea unless we sign another agreement. And that's very rare and almost never happens to us. Okay. So go ahead and make sure you're reading everything and make sure you understand. Also, like once you get in for onboarding and they make you sign all of those IT documents, read those. I know the handbook is a pain. I know, but they throw in a lot of things in handbooks. In the IT sign off, the IT one is usually the worst one because they'll say that they can monitor your keystrokes, they can monitor your Teams messages, they can monitor every system. There is no expectation of privacy on your work computer or in your conversations using work technology. So you need to understand all of that when you're going into it and how intense their IT is. I saw somebody ask what are the code words, but it's not really that there's code words. Every company is going to be looking for different things based on how they treat their employees and what people are saying about them. So I would suggest that you make sure, usually, like I know for my teammates, when we are teams and we have a conversation, we'll say, this is a conversation and not a Teams, and we'll move to a conversation. Because if we're on our cell phones, they can't track that because those are our personal devices. So we move any conversations we don't want in Teams, or any more detail that we don't want to be visible to IT at any point from those things, even if it's just because we are talking about an employee and we don't want that information in the Teams record for, some nosy IT person to read. Because they
Yeah,
break.
it's interesting that you mentioned Teams. I was sitting in my office one day working remotely, and I hear these voices coming out of my computer, and it's people from work. I am not on that team call. I am not on that team call. And I guess I had not signed out of the previous team call that I was on, and they had no idea that I could hear them. And that made me very nervous. So I don't like Teams for that reason. I don't know if that's a glitch that they fixed or not, but that scared the heck out of me. And luckily, they weren't saying anything horrible, but it was two people on another Teams call having their own conversation. So just be careful with Teams. But yeah, so that's important. But I know that, with the offer letter, and you're saying to hold on to that because the details are in the pudding and they change later down the road. And so what's the benefit to holding on to that offer letter?
Well, you want to make sure that they give you everything they promised you in the offer. So a lot of times, if you're leaving a bonus, they will agree to match your bonus. So you want to make sure that it's not going to be prorated. Like those things are typically spelled out in that offer if they're going to do that, or if you negotiate extra PTO or anything like that. Make sure you also are negotiating your salaries when you're hiring. Do not take what they're saying. They'll say what their range is and you'll say, well, my range is this. And if they want you, they'll pay you. Like don't don't just accept what they're saying unless that's what you want, right? Sometimes you can say, this is what I'm looking for, knowing that you're, overselling and hoping that they'll come to what you really want. And so they'll do, but like I said, make sure you're just really keeping that offer letter, because I've had situations where, the information to get communicated to payroll and they're the ones who have to pay the bonus. And if you don't have a copy of the offer letter, you may have forgotten about it and you never get your sign-on bonus, or you never get your bonus payment, and then it's months later. And yeah, HR has a copy of your offer letter, but then you have to go through all of the rigmarole of having someone look it up, and if your HR department is not working in your best interest, then they may say, oh, we don't have a copy of it.
Yeah. So can somebody speak to Michelle or Stacie the importance of negotiating? Because I think particularly as women, we're not comfortable with negotiating. We feel like we're going to negotiate ourselves right out of the position. But talk to the power and the necessity for being confident in your skill set and negotiating, and how you think people should do it.
That's real, and that's incredibly important, because you have to also remember who the recruiter is. They could even likely be in a role that is significantly, making less, right, than what they're even going to be offering you. And so the difference where if let's say I'm interviewing and Tara says, well, how much do you want? What's your range? I'm going to say, well, please tell me what's the range for the position. Are you paying for experience? What is the range? You want the organization to give you a range first, because if Tara asks me what my range is, and let's just say I just said, well, I'm looking for 150, and Tara's like, oh, we're going to 250. You know what? We're going to give you 175. And I'm like, yeah, I got 175. I only wanted 150. And then, they're laughing all the way to the bank because that was what I threw out. It's also in the mindset, it can be, of the recruiter when they say, so if I said, oh yeah, I want, I need $10 an hour, and maybe they know the range goes up to 20, but in their mind, if I say I want 10 and they're offering $20 an hour, well, then they can't even see that they would give me that much, even if I have the experience for it. It's such a leap. I've even heard recruiters say, Why do they think they're going to come here and make so much money if they've ever only made at such and such was the $10? And that happens all the way. It doesn't matter if you're talking 10,000, 100,000, 200,000. It doesn't matter. It's the same across the board. But you want to be able to vocalize. You want to hear from them before you vocalize what your point is. But if you've done your research and you're well aware of not only your worth but what the market is paying, you should have a fairly good idea of what's out there.
Oh, and to add on, most states are doing more for pay transparency. So there's going to be more visibility in what roles pay. So make sure that if you're in a state that does have pay transparency or is enacting it in the next year. So Maryland is in January, I think they're doing pay transparency. Like there's some other, DC does it, but Massachusetts, California, Colorado, if you're in any of those states where they're required to post what they pay for the position, make sure you're looking at those numbers first, because if the recruiter comes back with anything outside of that range, first of all, they can be reported. And second of all, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you need to make sure that you're there. And you can also know that if you're going in and the max they're paying for that range is 25 and you're going in at 27.50, you have a bigger hurdle because they might not talk to you because you're already outside of their range.
Absolutely. And I think there's a really good question here about why does it matter what your compensation was on the prior position?
Mhm.
It should not matter.
Mm-hmm.
It should not matter. And I've actually been in organizations where I've, consulted them to remove that question.
Yep.
Because it definitely skews the mindset and creates a bias on what they're going to pay. And unfortunately, that exists and it's very real. It should not matter what you've made in the past. You're like, I'm applying for this role, so please tell me, the range, and ask about total compensation. Just say it's very difficult for me to provide a number to you when I don't know. I need all the responsibilities, the total compensation. What does it look like even from your benefits? I mean, if I leave someplace and it's going to be, $500 a week for benefits versus $50 a week, I need to know all those components before I can get to a number. So when we say we're negotiable, these are the things that we are looking at. Know what you're willing to negotiate.
Yeah, and also
Right.
the benefits.
Excuse me, there are states also where, and New Jersey is one of them, where they're no longer allowed to ask for your previous salaries. And I think more states are moving towards that because,
Right.
maybe I have a PhD, but I just was, working at Walmart because that's what I wanted to do. So you're going to base my salary on that. So also understand the laws of the state that you're in, and if they, like, even this job I got here, I'm in Florida now and I applied for the job. I was living in New Jersey and I knew that was Jersey's law and I just assumed it was the same in Florida. I don't know why. But when I did my application and they said, oh, we got your application, but you didn't put down, what your previous salaries were. And I said, because I don't have to. And, when you're a lawyer, people just assume you know what you're talking about. So, and I really did think I was right at that point. And what relevance does it have? What does your job pay? And, now I'm in an HR role and I've been pushing for us as an organization, advertise the job with the salary. So if you're in a position and you're able to influence that, it saves everybody a lot of time. I'm not going to, if I'm looking for $50,000, I'm not going to apply for a job that's paying 30. But if I'm worth 100,000, I want to work for this $50,000 job. I also say don't make assumptions about what people want. Maybe that's what I want to do right now. So, but anyway, go ahead. You were getting ready to say something, Stacie.
I was going to speak to the about, like, just back up a bit and talk about the interview process, because I always go into an interview, first of all, is thinking of it as practice. And just knowing that, well, I research that organization and see what the lay of the land is, because I'm feeling as if I'm bringing something to the table. I have a set of skills, I have knowledge, I have a vast amount of experience. So I know what it is that I'm bringing to this organization. What are they offering me? And so that interview is a time for you all to really get at some of the things that you're concerned about. And that's what I use that opportunity for. It's not only just a matter of being able to showcase what my skills are, but also when they ask you what it is that, do you have any questions? I always come with the top 2 or 3 questions that I want to know. What's your management style like? What would your peers say about you as a leader? Or, what's the sticky thing that's bothering you right now that somebody needs to deal with on day one? Things like that will help to illuminate for you what that organization is going to be like and what your needs are. There's certain at this phase of my career, there's certain things I'm not willing to do any longer. So if that is a part of this job, then I can sit here where I am because I don't have to do that, right? So knowing where you are in your career journey and what it is that you're looking for in an organization and a leader is really important, because you need to kind of fine tune what that is and what you're looking for. That gives you a more of a ability to see what's out there when you're going into these interviews.
And can I also piggyback on that and say for the interview process, stop perming your hair and taking out your braids and all that stuff. Show up as who you are. I think that,
Good point.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm 64, so I'm like, this is who I am. We're not going through those changes. And, there's this pressure for us to code switch and to show up as someone that we're not, which only adds to the stress, right? We're going to have stress in the
Yeah.
workplace anyway. So if you have a problem that I wear an afro and a dashiki, then you need to know that now. Like, just don't even hire me because this is who I am. And I know, when we need a job and, we want to play the part or whatever, but we suffer. We suffer as a result of that. So, I'm encouraging you, don't wait till you're in your 60s. Like, if you're in your 30s and 40s or whatever, be who you are. Show up at that interview as, if you have braids in your hair, you got braids in your hair. Now they should be neat and all that stuff, but that goes without saying.
Mm-hmm.
But, I remember the days, and I'm sure everybody on this call does too. You're like, oh my God, I got to take my braids out. I got an interview. Or, oh my God, I got to get a perm. Like, no more. Embrace who we are. So anyway, those are all good things. Michelle, you have such good information that you can share with us about technology, because in terms of, using their product, Michelle, you take it from there, because I hadn't thought of a lot of things that she's getting ready to say, and I think that you'll find it quite interesting. And again, if you're not in the workplace, you have children who are, you have friends who are, so please, take notes and pass this information on. Go ahead, Miss Ann.
This stuff it's transactional, so just know that there's not a company, an HR department. They are not loyal to you. You need to protect yourself. There are some better HR professionals, and we stand up and we advocate for people, and sometimes we are the only ones doing that. But just know that it's transactional, and they are not loyal to you, and especially not loyal to us. Mm-hmm. There's a really good question here about the phones. I would say always have 2 phones. Never, if they provide a phone to you for work, never mix personal and professional. They're like, I don't want to carry 2 phones. I think there's previous times in previous life, like, oh, this is such a great benefit. I don't have to pay for a phone, and I've got this phone. I can use it for both. Do not. You need to keep it separate. That stuff will merge. It will merge even when you don't want it to merge. There are too many things that can happen. Do not merge that. Definitely keep it all separate. Even when you're when you think about the monitoring, that's happening, also with your laptop, which can easily just, come on. And of course, IT has a lot of access to it. I would always mute it. So I know on mine, I mute the speaker as far as what's coming out. I mute the microphone as far as what's going out to them. I even close the camera. I never have that stuff on. I turn the laptop completely off. I'll send it to, even put it, in another room. But when you think about technology, there's so much access. Never access anything personally related on your work laptop, because that it may be able to access again. So if you went to your Gmail account, on that computer. Now later you're leaving, you're sending stuff to Gmail, or now there's just the access of everything that you've done on there. Just you don't want to give that kind of access, ever. Tara, were there other things? I know that we had quite a list of
we do have a long list. So like even for your laptop, Michelle mentioned turning it off. Also invest in the little screen covers, the camera covers, because not only can your IT team hack into your computer and see through the lens of your computer, actually hackers can do the same. So like make sure if you have a home office, your laptop, if it's open, that your screen is covered, that it's facing a blank wall or something where it cannot see into your house and into your surroundings in the event that you leave it uncovered for whatever reason. Make sure that there's nothing visible or that can give you details about your personal information that is visible from the camera on your laptop. I mean, I know for me, I have, multiple laptops. I have my personal one, I have my work one, and then I also have a third camera. Make sure they all have lens covers. They all have to have lens covers. They're all closed unless I'm using it. Don't make sure I have a separate mic for my work computer that is turned off. Like all of those things are things that people can hack into at any time. And so you don't want them accessible even on your personal devices when you're not using it. Turn your work laptop off on the weekend. If you're not logging in for any reason, turn it all the way off. That way on the weekend, if for whatever reason they want to get into your computer, nobody can get into your computer. So there's things like that you can do. If you're going on vacation, make sure that computer is completely signed off. Like don't leave your work laptop open, plugged in, just on sleep mode while you're gone. And remember, if it's on sleep mode, that means that IT can access it and take it off of sleep mode. So if it's on sleep mode, anybody can log into that computer remotely that has access to it. And they can tell you, oh, I'm going to log into your computer when you're using it. And, I've worked for companies where they don't tell you, where they clone your desktop and they monitor your key strokes while you're typing things. So even if they can't see what you're saying, they know what you typed because they're just tracking what letters you're pressing in the keyboard. So you have to, hopefully most companies are not that detailed. They don't go that detailed into it. That company was kind of a nightmare that I worked for, which is one of the reasons I don't work there anymore. But they actively monitored people's computers and they actively logged in and they would watch people work all day. Like they would have it on another screen and see every single thing you're doing. Even people in the HR department who they have no business watching because most of their work is confidential.
So here's that's interesting. Somebody has on here, what role does HR play in protecting what role does HR play in protecting the employee or being an advocate? Stacie, you take that one.
HR is not your friend. I'm sorry to say it.
That's what I was gonna say.
But they're not your friend. If you work in public service, usually there is an equal employment office. That's where you can get some assistance. But in a private sector, no. And even in the public sector, HR is not your friend. They're usually on the side of management. So you have to protect yourself. That means if there's an incident that may have occurred, then I would immediately send yourself an email to make a memo to your to the file saying this is what happened. Those types of things become, I forget the legal term, but that information can be used to support you if you decide to either grieve or complain or something like that. You have a record of what has already happened. So yeah, no, you can go to HR, but if you go to them, just understand that it may not end up in your favor, and it's likely it will not because HR is usually going to be supportive of management.
Yeah.
And HR is interesting, right? Because remember, it used to be called personnel,
Hmm.
and then it was called human resources, and now we're calling it people. So they have all these labels that suggest that
The truth.
they're here for you. And I work in HR, and right
Same.
now I'm the head of HR, but it's a culture that's out there that is not pro-employee. And I was talking to one of the ladies earlier today, and it's like you almost have to be on the defense as soon as you start working. I hate to say it, but ultimately, troubles are coming. Trouble's going to find its way to your door. And you know what? I always like to use Omarosa as an example here. If you all remember, Omarosa was drinking the Trump Kool-Aid, and anything they said, what she said, we were going to bow down to him. Look, when they went to come for Omarosa in the workplace, if you'll recall, they didn't know what she had and what she didn't have. She had been keeping records on them from day one. So if you're in, and as Stacie just said, if you're in a conversation, if I called, I had a supervisor who, if he would ask me to do things like either that wasn't in my job description or something that, is going to take away from the job that I'm supposed to be doing, you follow up with an email. As soon as Tara leaves my office, hey, Tara, thanks for stopping by. I'm memorializing what we talked about because when the S hits the fan, I'm going to be able to produce something that says, no, on such and such a day, we had this conversation and you told me that this project was a priority over that project. Or, you asked me to, reprimand so and so for just whatever it is, just a CYA. And you don't have to go into a long detail, just something that indicates, like, yeah, we had this conversation. So it's a CYA tactic. And what happens is when you start memorializing stuff, people recognize what you're doing if they've got a little bit of smarts about them. And they're going to stop asking you, they're going to stop putting you in these situations. But you really have to start protecting yourself, and you can't wait for trouble to come, which we often do because, we're in the honeymoon stage and everything's fine. We're so excited about this job and this new opportunity. But trust and believe, you are going to eventually find yourself in a situation where you're going to need to CYA. And one thing that Black people don't do as well as other people, because we just do what we do, is what you're supposed to do. But trust me, when Becky dots an I and crosses a T, she is making a big deal out of it. And she's making sure that everybody knows it. And you're thinking like, but you're supposed to dot the I and cross the T. So we need to learn how to do some of that, or at least make sure that we're keeping an ongoing record, a log of even the most minute accomplishments that we have, done in the workplace. So, yeah. Anyway, so
All of that's going to be,
what
it's
else do
all
we
going to be
need?
needed. We
Go
need that
ahead.
whole list from day one. So, even after you got there and you've got your offer letter, which you're going to need because someone could say, oh, well, your title is this doesn't come with that. I've been in that situation where, the sign on, it wasn't, I didn't receive it. I had to circle back, and thankfully I did have the letter. But you'll want to know everything from how do they pay out vacation or stock, or is there a pension? What is their severance policy? All of that is written somewhere. If you're not sure where, be sure that you get it. Protecting yourself, but when there are conversations, things are happening, there are things that you don't agree with, you want to circle back and say, you know what? Thank you for the update on the meeting, Helen. I just want to ensure that I'm clear that the next step you're asking is for me to X, Y, and Z. But cover yourself. You want a response, from them on what you're doing. It'll definitely come in handy. You're going to need it. But unfortunately, you'll stay, you keep going, but at some point you're going to need that. And it'll be the difference of if you get to the point where they've dissolved your role or just dissolved you, or where they took all of your gifts and your presence is no longer wanted, you're going to want to have all of that documentation from them. And I know that and it's hard to later to be able to try to remember, right? So just try to as you go along. And even if it's one of those days and you're thinking, I can't believe they did that to me, document. Because one day you're going to wake up and say, you know what? I've had enough. I'm going to the EOC. I'm doing something, or something's going to happen, or they've decided that they're done with you. You'll be glad that you have the documentation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
There's
somebody
a
has
lot of research
Go ahead,
that says
Stacie.
that just taking 15 minutes before you close out your day and just journaling what happened, that's a great way of just being able to capture and just make it a habit. You know, it's not only good for you, like just in terms of work, but dumping your mind before you go off to, you know, real life, and leaving all of that there. But that's also a way of capturing what happened throughout the day, so that can help to trigger your mind. If something does happen, you've made it a habit of documenting what's happened on a daily, weekly basis, or what have you. So that way it doesn't seem as if, oh, she just started documenting when XYZ happened. No, this is something I tend to do, right? So this is just a habit of mine. So that way it comes across as really truthful and genuine as you being able to document what's happened.
I love that.
I'm sorry.
Tara, you were going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, make sure you're keeping your daily notes, make sure, and especially on the days where somebody says something to you and you just like it doesn't feel like you're not sure if that was uh one of their unconscious biases that just hit you, if it was a little ding, you're like, I don't know exactly what that was, but it just feels off. Make sure you're capturing that, because what you'll notice as you're documenting is a pattern of behavior. And that's their biggest thing. Like, if you can prove a pattern of behavior, that's good. If you need a legal challenge, that's good. If you need, you're establishing how you're treated on a daily basis, conversations that you're having, expectations that are given to you that are not the same expectations, especially if you're doing the same role as somebody else. Yes, microaggressions. My brain did not work for that word. Yes, microaggressions.
I was trying not to, but yeah, that's what they call. That's the nice word for bad behavior. They have
Yeah.
cute names for it.
Yeah. So yeah, the microaggressions, which are real, all right? I mean, how many times have we all been told that your facial expression in a meeting, they thought you were angry, or they thought you were upset, or they didn't understand why you were making that face in that meeting? And you're like, are you really telling me, when Becky, I literally read every thought across her face the whole meeting, but you're concerned because I sat there confused, because that was the confused face as to how we got into this situation in the first place and how ridiculous you all are. So it's my confused face, but I'm aggressive, but she's literally gone from anger to disbelief to everything, and you can read it all on her face and nobody says anything to her. So
I want you to unmute. I'm going to say something and I want you to finish it. Please. Humor me. I'm talking to Stacie and Michelle. Can you unmute? So when
Yes.
I say, it's not what you say, Helen, what does she say to me?
That's how you say it.
How you say it.
Say it. How many of us have not heard that? It's not what you
Yeah.
say. And there's all this documentation out there on tone policing. And there is this thing about tone police, because we're angry Black women. We're always angry, and don't let a white woman shed tears in a meeting because you are the big bad wolf and it's like, really, can we stop with this? And so it's this whole thing about fragility, right? On the one hand, I am woman, hear me roar, but when it's convenient, I can bring on the tears. And they know that tears are effective and they're going to get what they want. And if we cry at the workplace, somehow it's not received the same way, like
Right.
you'll be all right. So we know that happens. But anyway, that one just blows my mind. And there's a good article, I'll drop it in the chats for you. It's called When the Black Woman Goes from the Office Pet to the Office Threat. So when we first start, they're so happy you're there, and we want to hear all your ideas. And then, at some point, you hear your ideas coming out of somebody else's mouth, like you just said it. And then if you're not willing to go along and be the face of whatever it is that they're trying to get you to do, then you become the office threat. And that's real. Can we talk about this whole thing about at will employment and what it means? Because I think people think that, I'm hired at will and I don't have any say. So, anybody want to address the at will situation and what it means or what it does not mean? Because I think we all assume that, I'm hired at will and they can just walk in my office today and fire me. And yeah, they can, but not that easy. Anybody want to address that or you want me to? Okay. So basically, what happens with at will, if you're and listen to this, if you're a small employee, if you're an employer. So if I just walk into Michelle's office and say, Michelle, today's your last day, pack up your stuff and get out. Yeah, they can do that. But if in fact they start giving you this, any kind of, reasons or whatever, like if you know that they tell, they say, well, you're late every day. We just can't take it anymore. So today's your last day. Well, if you know that Becky is late every day and everybody else is late, they just set themselves up for this thing called disparate treatment. And let me talk to you about protected classes. You are a protected class, meaning that there are special provisions that are made for you in the workplace because based on race, based on gender, and the one that most people really don't understand is age. And I know before I went to law school, I thought age protection started at, 50, 60. No, ladies, if you are 40 years old, you are protected. You are age protected. So if you feel that you're being treated differently based on age, based on race, based on a disability, you just came back from a sick leave, hint, 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 and people you just come back from a sick leave and people are giving you a hard time. You're protected from all of that. And the thing that I want you to understand most of all, well, all of this is important, but also recognize that you are protected from retaliation. So if in fact you file a complaint against your employer and then your employer ratchets it up and starts coming at you even more, oh, they just made your day. Right? They are not allowed to retaliate against you for filing a complaint. And HR, and as we were saying earlier, HR would do better if they would chastise managers instead of trying to justify everything that a manager did. Because we talk about a hostile workplace, and some of what's created, sometimes we have these hostile workplaces that are created by who? By HR, by, leadership. Somebody had a question in here about a micromanager who wants control of your calendar. I personally don't give anybody access to my calendar, and that's my right. If you want, I have an assistant. If you want to meet with me, you're going to go through her, or you can pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, Helen, are you available? But what you're not going to do is drop stuff on my calendar. I will let you know if I want to meet with you. And I want to know what it's about, because a lot of people just want to fill their day up with meetings, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But you're not going to fill my day up with nonsense meetings around that. But just be mindful that, if somebody tells you that they're terminating you, get them to tell you why. And if you can show, that, they haven't done the same to someone else, or they're treating you differently in some kind of way, and you're in one of those protected categories, and I just mentioned a few of them. It has expanded. There's so many protected categories. And also recognize that you have 300 days from the day of incident to file a claim with EEOC. So, you got almost a year. So you can start keeping your journal, as Stacie said. I love that. At the end of every day, take 10 minutes or 15 minutes and just write down what your day was. I love that. So, yeah, so don't think that. And resignation, at will, just like they can tell you you're finished today, you can tell them I'm done today. You can step. This whole thing about a 2-week notice, that's a courtesy. You don't have to do that. I think we're conditioned to do it because we want to get a good reference, but at the end of the day, if it's an employer that has been treated you less than professionally, get the step in, and because they're not going to give you a good reference anyway. So Just keep that in mind. But anyway, so Stacie, anything that you want to jump in and add or anything? I'm trying to look at the chats and see what's out here. Yeah,
Right.
Kim says document, document, document. Absolutely. Document your hiney off.
And I just saw
Absolutely.
saying the rehire question. Yeah, so most HR teams will only answer will only give dates of employment and eligible for rehire as a response to questions. They do not do references anymore. They only do employment verifications. And those are that's literally if they want your dates, your title, your dates of employment, and if you're eligible for rehire. And yes, you can be ineligible for rehire for a lot of things, and a lot of companies will mark you that way. I don't know necessarily. I guess it depends on industry skills, what you're doing, if you're not going to get another position because that company did that. I think some of that can be explained in an interview if you know in the process, especially if you know you're coming from a situation. I think that's in one of those times where when you're talking to the recruiter, you're going to have to disclose that this was a horrible situation, but honestly, that rehire one, a lot of times I know for my HR team currently, they only will answer no, they won't rehire if it was like they termed somebody for theft or things like that are very serious. So like job abandonment, yeah, no, we won't really rehire you, but we won't tell people that we won't rehire you. You know what I'm saying? So like they look at the reason of why we termed and then they decide, okay, yeah, this was a huge thing. They stole, the we do property management, so they stole the card to pay the bills at the property. So yes, that's a big deal. That's theft, right? And there's obviously a case and things. So no, we're going to say, they're not eligible for rehire, but they didn't come to work for 3 days. We're not going to say necessarily, oh, you're not eligible for rehire, even if they aren't for us. They could be fine somewhere else. So it depends. Some HR departments are like that. Some HR departments are not. Some HR departments are very vindictive and they will very much say no, even if you are eligible for rehire.
And I
And
would
some
Well,
one
yeah,
thing that
go ahead.
there's if you're in a situation and you know that you're leaving an organization, say that you're about to be terminated and for whatever reason, and that you're going to quit in lieu of, see if there's a way that you can negotiate that what that vetting is going to be. I know that we've done settlement, or in my past I've done settlement agreements where individuals will ask for what's called neutral vetting, so that whatever that response is from HR when people do come is that they're only given the dates that the people were employed there and nothing further than that, or will say yes that they worked here, but won't say either way whether you are a good or bad employee. So think about that if there's a situation that you're in and there's an opportunity for you to negotiate terms of your disengagement from that organization. See if you can ask for neutral vetting. That will give you some more latitude for you going and security in going into your next position.
And you're right. Depends on what you're doing. If you resign in lieu of, you may not be eligible for unemployment. You're likely not going to be eligible for unemployment. So keep that too. So make sure, we said negotiate on hire, but negotiate on termination is also important. And then as they were saying with severance, keep in mind if you're over 40 for severance, they have to give you extra time to consider the severance agreement,
right,
and allow you the opportunity to have it vetted by a lawyer. So that's another thing as a part of being older, that you get a little bit more time than a normal person in the severance agreement.
what's a typical time that they will allow for contemplation of a severance agreement?
Look, I'm going to look
Or
in
is
the
it vary?
ADA. I think that it's I think that it's 2 weeks, but it might be 30 days. Let me look it up real quick.
30 days is for 45 and older.
45, yeah.
That 2 weeks is the standard.
2 weeks is very standard.
45 or 40?
45.
40 45. Okay.
If you're applying for another position somewhere, and on that application, they say, oh, well, who's their supervisor? What's their phone number? Don't do that unless that's somebody that you know that you want them to speak for you. And if that's the case, then utilize them as a reference. Because you have to know that many supervisors, managers, hiring managers, bosses, whoever, do not know that they should not be saying whether you're eligible for, or they're going to give information. Yeah, she was okay. I mean, they'll just start talking, but just definitely don't utilize them on those forms. And then if you do receive that letter, or they're asking you to resign, in lieu of, don't sign anything immediately. And even if it says, oh, we want this back in the next 48 hours, you do what you need to do and get, resources, get help, get support, get someone to read it over, look it over, but don't feel pressure to do something immediately. You're going to be in a heightened state of emotion when that happens. And that would be the worst thing that you could do, would be to make an immediate decision.
It's true.
Remember, they want you to sign things sooner because they want you to go away. They want you to go quietly. Well, there are other ways for us to go quietly, and we can package that up nicely.
Yeah, for sure.
It looks like somebody asked if you take a package or if you're eligible for unemployment. It depends on the package. Usually severance is their company says that they're terminating you, but sometimes they'll do it as mutual agreement. So mutual agreement is a little more difficult to do unemployment, but if they say that they're terminating you or they're severancing you out, then typically, unless it was for gross misconduct, you can still apply for unemployment.
Yeah, most employers are not wanting to find themselves in a litigious situation. So as Stacie said, they're going to verify, or maybe Tara, they're just going to say, did she work here? Yes. From this date to that, excuse me, this day to that day, yes. So they'll verify the length of employment. And sometimes they won't even discuss salary. Because they don't want to be in the middle of it. And another thing, somebody called me a few weeks ago, and they were very upset that someone who they use as a reference, they came to find that that person was not giving them a good reference. So we also need to vet who our references are. And, it goes back to the old adage of, your coworkers are not your friends. I used to tell my students that all the time. You may eat lunch with me every day while we're working together, and think about jobs that you've left, people you were really close to. Have you kept in touch with them? Maybe one, maybe two, but for the most part, you haven't. And be careful who you put down as a reference. And you might just, and this person was someone she thought was a friend. So I don't know how you get around that. I remember once getting a written reference from an employer before I went to another employer. And I picked it up from his office. And don't ask me what made me open that letter. It was not favorable at all. So I wasn't the Helen that I am now, because I would have called him up and, like if somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do, just don't do it. But if I had hand delivered that letter to the next employer, I mean, like, what do you say? So just be careful who you're asking for to be your reference. And as Michelle said, it's not always the person that you reported to is not always the best person to put down as your reference. So I want to open it up. If you have questions, can you raise your electronic hand so we can answer your specific questions? I think we're trying to keep yeah, Kilty is right, Why? Yeah, before you leave, say, hey, can I get a written reference? And sometimes I'll even tell you to write it yourself. Write it up and I'll sign it for you. And then, 5 months from now, when they decide they don't like you anymore, when somebody asks you for a reference, you can submit that written reference, get it on the letterhead and have it, keep it with you. So that's always a good idea too.
And a lot of companies aren't taking, written references because they're utilizing outside companies to do the backgrounds for the employment. So for a lot of it, it won't even be relevant.
Yeah. And then also like if you're giving references for people, make sure like if you're somebody who's giving a reference for somebody, make sure you can use them as a reference as well. Like, and then make sure that you're vetting the person, is as Helen said. But like, I know I have a good friend who, when she is looking for a job, she'll call me and say, okay, this person is calling you. This is what I told them. This is my expectation for the conversation. That's what you should be doing. Like, you should be, if anybody you're using as a reference, you should be able to call them and say, okay, this is the company that's calling you. This is what I told them my position was, my title was. Even because if it's been a couple of years, they may have forgotten some of that. I mean, if you already have a good enough relationship that you want them to be a reference, they should already have a good feel about you. So that part is the easy part. It's the details that they may not remember. So you always have that pre-call that I'm looking for a job. These are the people who are going to call you. I'm using you as a reference. And make sure you clear it with them before you put them down, right? Say, I'm looking for work. Can I use you as a reference? That way you're clear on that. I'll be honest, our recruiter was telling me yesterday that she had a VP candidate and she called the references and she was like, I would be embarrassed if I had those references given about me. So that tells you how bad the person is, like how bad the quality of their references were. Right? Because this is their number one candidate. She's from the recruiting standpoint. That's their number one candidate. And she calls the references and they're giving, she was okay. Or, very mediocre recommendations at best.
Right. Not good. Not good.
Right.
Are we missing anything in the chats? And with your references, you can, you can call a friend, say, hey, Helen, I want you to call such and such and say that you're doing a reference just to see what they're going to say. So if you're on the edge about something, get somebody, particularly if it's somebody that has a company.
That's a good idea.
And then when they call, maybe they're not available, so that when they call that person back, they're actually calling a company and they can do that for you. That's always helpful too.
Helen, someone referenced a WAND, WAND document earlier on. I don't know what that is.
Oh, I think it said WARN, right? WARN.
WARN, yes, I'm sorry. WARN. What does that mean?
I didn't put it in. I don't know. Oh, who put it? Did you put it in there?
That was a while ago.
Yeah, I
It
don't
says
know.
be familiar with the Warren report. It was C. Johnson.
It's me, Helen. The Warren report tells you which companies are laying off staff across the US. If a company has more than 25 employees, I believe, they have to report to the Department of Labor in the given state how many employees are being released and when those employees will be released within a 90-day window. So if you're looking at companies, you might want to check out who's laying off. Big names like Intel, who's making billions of dollars, has got a target within probably the next 30 days to lay off about 15,000 people. So check them out.
Keep that in mind.
WARN report.
Thank you. Rochelle, you have a question? Rochelle?
Yes, there was a question earlier and I piggybacked. I don't recall hearing the answer. When they asked about when your manager wants you to open your calendar to them. And I said to add to that, what can you do, or what happens when they want you to CC them on every email? Is that something that can be made an issue, and how do you handle that?
So, for me, it's a style of management, and I'll let somebody else answer that because I already said what I do. I don't share my calendar with
Yeah,
anybody.
I
I'm
guess I
not.
thought it might even be toxic work environment, but you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's what, when you're saying they want you to CC them, they want you to CC, I would start looking for another job, honestly. Um, I mean, I'm just gonna be very honest with you, because that person is looking for something when dealing with you. The only time that anybody ever asks you to CC them on something is when they've heard from somebody that you said something, or they think that you're not doing the work, or one of your teammates said, "Oh, she's just sitting around on the computer all day and I'm doing all the work." Like, there's something they're looking for that they want to
Or
use.
they're just a micromanager and
I
they
mean,
just do it to everybody.
I mean, most,
I mean, that's a possibility too.
okay. But if they might do it to everyone, that's something you can find out, right? Like, if you talk to
Right.
your mates and they're all saying, "Oh, I have to CC," but it could also be, there's also the girl on your team who could very much be like, "Oh, I automatically CC Barb for everything, on everything I do," and so now Barb thinks that's what everybody should do on the team. So just kind of know the environment a little bit, but typically, if they're want you to CC, it's a lack of trust, and they think that there's something going on behind the scenes, and they're trying to see how you're talking to people and what you're saying to people, and if there's stuff they don't know.
Definitely a lack of trust. And if it wanted me to CC me on everything, I would ask why. But I definitely, I probably start looking. And I just say that, in this space because as, Black women, and you're trying to exude excellence in all these spaces and thinking that everything's going to change around you, we get those red flags. We're like, oh, red flag,
Mhm.
ignore it. Red flag, ignore it. Red flag, ignore it. If we could capture some of those early on, we wouldn't still be there 20 flags later to the point where we're now being, escorted out the door.
Or
Good point.
or
And
go ahead.
Go ahead. What'd you say, Stace?
oh, okay. I was going to say that in addition to that is that flag is an opportunity. Each flag is an opportunity for a conversation. So for us, it's a matter of, we don't often, as Black women, don't often get that critical feedback that others get. And so if there's something that's going on, you see a red flag where they're asking you either to document your time, or if it's, I'm going to CC you, you need to CC me on every email. It's a conversation. Oh, well, is there something wrong? What can I do? What led to this? Are others, are you doing this with everyone? Start asking questions and do it really humbly, but just asking. I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, and I want to get at what it is that you're looking for from me. So what can I do to make it, make us not, basically, you're trying to figure out, I don't want to do this, right? I don't want to CC you on every single thing. So what's the issue? What is the real issue? But of course, you can't say it just like that, or you can. But in my environment, I found that using a little bit of sugar, it goes a lot easier, because they expect to hear vinegar from us all the time. So you have to, like the other ladies were saying, is that just really know what your environment is like. And it's a delicate balance that we have to, and a fine line that we have to walk all the time.
So I'm sharing with you all. Can you all see my screen? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can see the diagram?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you all have seen this before, but this is pretty much shows the trajectory that we have when we're in the workplace. So women of color enters into the workplace, and the white leadership, you're a tokenized hire, you're in the honeymoon stage, you're welcomed, and everybody's so happy that you're there. And then reality kicks in, and you start having repetitive injury and microaggressions. The woman of color points out issues within the organization. She tries to work within the organization structure and policies, and she pushes for accountability. So now you're becoming a problem. And there are denials of racism. We're not racist, right? The organization denies or ignores or blames the responsibility of facing the problem is put back onto the woman of color, and people of color are pitted against one another. We definitely need to talk about that, because somebody said it in the intro, that happens a lot too. Like they'll know, like, get the Black people to turn on the person. So then you become the target, and you're attacked, and then there's a retaliation, which we talked about. The organization decides that the woman of color, you're the problem, and then they start targeting you. And the organization labels a conflict as a communication issue and claims that you're no longer qualified. And we all know when we've not been that good fit. So I don't know if that resonates with you all or if you've seen it
Yes.
before. I can definitely share it with you, but that's pretty much what happens to us in the workplace. And I'll share with you, I was listening to Joe Madison, and he was talking about something very not workplace related, but he talked about the 4 Ds. And what they do is they first, let me see if I can get them. Somebody help me if I forget one of the Ds. First, and this is like in general, when people want to take you down. First, they will dismiss you, and then they discredit you, and then they demonize you, and then they come in for the destroy. So those are the 4 Ds. And that's what happens in the workplace too. But anyway, so yeah,
Yeah,
but
and there. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say is that in addition to that, you've seen and we've seen in situations where a Black woman or woman of color is placed into into that savior mode, right? You're brought into the organization because something has gone terribly wrong, and they're going to be brought in as the savior. So they're taken on and given this role of saving the organization. However, that problem is a problem that has been there for a long, long time, right? And nobody has wanted to tackle it. It's sticky, it's messy, whatever. And then you see where this Black woman or a person of color, Black men sometimes too, where they have not been able to solve this problem, and then they're terminated quickly, and then everything is blamed on them. That's called the glass cliff. It's a real thing. It's happened. It's documented. I know that all of us on this call have seen it. And so that is something too that we have to be aware of, because we're going in there with the being darned with the superwoman cape, but often not given all the resources that we need to resolve this problem, aren't given the buy-in or the ability to pull people together. Everything is given to us and we're responsible for it. And then of course, when it doesn't go right, we're demonized for oh, she did a terrible job. Or even sometimes I've had this experience where you're given this problem, and then you're basically made a pariah in the organization. And I've seen this happen before. You're moved to this small office in the bad side of the building, and nobody wants to talk to you anymore because your hands are dirty since you had that terrible problem or the terrible incident. Those are all real things. So mental health is really, really important for us. And we really need to lean more into that and on each other so that we can help to navigate that. It's just a lot for us to deal with in the workplace. Clean up on aisle 5. Exactly.
Yeah.
And how many of us have walked into a situation, I know I have, and Tara has been a problem employee forever.
Yes.
And now that I'm here, I'm supposed to fix Tara.
Yeah.
They tell you everything that Tara did before you got here, and they never fired Tara, but they want you to fire Tara. And I'm here to tell you, ladies, that you tell them, I'm not firing Tara. Tara will work for me, and if Tara's a problem, we will proceed on what happens once I'm here. So I know you want a job and you need a job, but do not do things. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. I remember a job I had in New York, this Indian woman. This is my problem with this whole thing with people of color, because she would be considered a people of color. It's also a problem I have when people say, hire a woman, they'll be more sensitive. No, when we get into these positions, many times we start doing the same behavior that we were upset about, we start doing it to other people. But I remember this Indian woman on her very first day in her job, she fires a Black woman. And I was like, where's so-and-so? Because, like lunchtime, like she never came back from lunch. Like, this woman walked past her office and saw her on her cell phone and just said, fire her. Who does that?
Wow.
Who does that on the first day? Like, who are you trying to impress? So don't allow yourselves to be put in situations where you're going to be asked to do things to people that you know aren't right. I have been asked to do things, you know, and like I know we had a situation where there were very few minorities in this place, and there was a suspicion that somebody was doing something very heinous in the workplace. They had nothing to prove it on, but they wanted me, black me, in the labor relations role to speak to this Puerto Rican man. He was Latino, I think he was Puerto Rican, and because they thought that he was doing it. And I'm like, what else you got other than what you think?
Right.
You know, because it was very heinous. There was no way he could go home and tell his wife, I just got fired for this. And I wasn't willing to be the face of it. And, you know, they were saying, okay, Helen, you know, and my supervisor, he kept saying, if you're not comfortable, just let me know. I'll sit down and, you know, I'll do it and you can take notes. Because, you know, in these, you know, labor relations situations, there's usually more than one person in the room and the union is there as well. This is a union shop. And as long as he thought I was going to accuse this man, and what I said to him is, I am not comfortable with that because at least if someone came to me with that, I would want to think that there's something. I can see why they thought that I did that. There was nothing. There was nothing that they had other than their thinking. And it was such a heinous act that black and brown people, we just don't do this kind. It was just that disgusting. It's not something that we do. And I just said no. And I was willing to be fired. I called his bluff. And I'm going to ask you, do you think they ever talked to the young man about it? Absolutely not. And I just said, this is going, you're begging for a lawsuit, and I am not going to be the face of it. So as long as my black face is willing to sit down and accuse, and you know, they were like, we're sure that you can get him to admit that he's doing it. No, not doing that. I'm not doing that. So just don't do things in the workplace that you're not comfortable with and treat people the way that you want to be treated. Because when this shit goes down, excuse my French, but you'll be the face of that. And, you know, I was at some point, I was director of affirmative action. They did a nationwide search. They came back with all these white people for a very high paying position. We had a black woman there. She didn't even get an interview because she wasn't a fit. And I refused to certify the search because that was my job. You just got to be willing to take a stand. And until we start taking a stand in the workplace, we're going to continue to have these problems. So I'm talking too much. Sorry, guys. But I'm just sharing this because I want you to know that, you know, you have power in the workplace. You do not have to be a victim. You can, you know, you have your integrity to protect. You have your health to protect. Don't bottle up a lot of stuff in the workplace and stop on the way home and have a drink or go home and beat your wife or your kids, or, you know, you're getting cancer and diabetes and high blood pressure because you're bottling up somebody else's stuff. Just don't do that to yourself.
Suicide, you know, that's
And
something that
suicide.
we
Somebody talked about the mental health. Suicide is
That's right.
real.
Mhm.
Very real, particularly for Black women. I don't know if you all are aware of the case in Lincoln, Missouri. It was an HBCU. They called her Dr. Bonnie. I can't believe I can't call her. But anyway, she committed suicide. She was harassed so badly in her job. And here she was at a Black institution being harassed by a white male. And when she went to the Black Board of Trustees, I'm assuming they were Black because we need to look at our HBCUs and see who's running our organizations. She got no help. And this woman literally killed herself and left a letter indicating why. It's not worth it. No job is worth it. Leave with your head held high, with your dignity, and know that you will be okay. So I'm sorry, there's two hands up, and I think Michelle was trying to say something too.
I'm glad that you went back to this, you know, that mental health piece. It's very real. And, you know, yes, you see people, you know, that's taking their lives because they're not getting the help from their employer. And you know, just as there's so many people, there are the Helens, the Michelles, the Stacies, the Taras, and there's so many others, and we're standing up in every room and, you know, for everyone and wanting to advocate. And we're trying to dismantle things while we're experiencing, you know, the same, you know, ourselves as well. But I got to tell you that, you know, if you're truly looking for the employer to be the one to rescue you, you're going to be disappointed. And
rescue yourself.
Got to rescue yourself. And you know how much you're taking in. At some point, you got to say, this is killing me. I'm not going to die for it.
Yeah.
You have all these other people we say we're working for, whether, you got to take care of kids, you got to take care of parents or whoever you're taking care of. You're not going to be able to do that if you don't take care of yourself. So when we say, these are the people that we love, take care of yourself so that you can actually be here to take care of your loved ones. But the employers, it is transactional. When they're done with you, they're done. And they're not going to be the ones, it's a rare thing that they're going to be the ones to rescue. So definitely, I can't say it enough, to take care of yourself. Find the support that you need, whether that's professional help, whether that's the sisterhood, the friend, whoever it is that you need. But it's not going to be the employer. The employer is loyal to the employer.
And also, when you're doing all of that other work and you find the help that you need, also take care of yourself by doing the self-care. Establish a self-care routine. It is so important. People who have a self-care, who set aside 20 minutes, 30 minutes daily, or maybe it's 2 hours on the weekend, set aside time just for themselves, no family, no friends, no nothing, are much more grounded and are much happier because they that time is within. So whether that's you're cutting everybody off at 9 o'clock, you're going to go read your book for an hour and then go to bed, that can be your self-care routine. And she's right, self-care is not selfish. It helps you to bring out the best of yourself for everyone else. So I know there's a lot of people who are ashamed to have a self-care routine, or don't want to say that they have a self-care routine, or don't think that self-care is important, but that is like step one. Because that whole, if you can't love anybody else before you love yourself, that self-care is loving yourself. You have to love yourself in order to be able to put your best self forward and out into the world.
And we need to be able to support each other. When someone says, hey, Stacie, I'm struggling. I got to find another job. Don't be the one that says, girl, why would you go find another job? You got a good job. You work for company XYZ. I'm like, yeah, you maybe even get my tail, beat up on every single day and harassed. So stop telling people, because they'll say, oh, you work for a company, blah, blah, blah. You've got this great job. You have no idea what that person may be going through. So when they come to you and they're saying, hey, I got to quit, I got to find another job, I got to do something else, say, let me help you. Just say, let me help you.
Yeah. And as Black women, let's help each other, right? And let's not be afraid to ask for help. Because we're all in the same boat. Miss Bay, your hand's been up for a while. What's your question, babe?
Yes, good afternoon, Helen, and welcome home. I just wanted to piggyback on a previous comment related to the self-care, including that self-care while things are going good, while you're getting your good paycheck. And I just want to encourage our sisters to establish something for yourself, and layman's term, a side hustle. It may not, you might not be ready to take it full blown and be a big official business or whatever, but just establish something for yourself. Find something that you enjoy doing and get an LLC. This is while things are going good. You may never do anything with it, but put the 150 or whatever it is out to get the LLC or the corporate papers, get your set of business cards, do a customer every now and again. It might be once a month or whatever, it's on something that you enjoy doing, but you don't ever want to leave yourself in a position where your back is totally up against the wall and you're absolutely dependent on that paycheck. So, and it also makes you have a feeling of self-confidence that you can be able to say, I'm out of here, and like I said, you nurture along the way while things are going good,
Right.
Picking up a customer every now and then, going to an event, and setting up a table or whatever, and you're not under pressure to really blow that business up because you got a paycheck coming in. But in the event that paycheck is gone, you have something that you've been nurturing for 1 or 2 years that you can now maybe say, hey, let me take this to a serious level. So I just wanted to share that from a woman that walked out of the workplace with 7 children on my back, okay, and a mortgage, and it wasn't easy. We were living in the poorhouse for a good while, but at the same time, I'm just saying there's life after the corporation, because listening to my sisters, listening to you queens speak, it lets me know we're in a battle against the corporation. Everything that you're saying leads to the fact that we're not comfortable, and taking it on down further down the line. One point that was made me think of our sister Kamala Harris. I really sincerely feel that she's being set up to be the fall guy. I don't know what the U.S. has got going on that they can't handle, but they're putting her in place.
We are the cleanup woman.
Yes.
Very often, we are the cleanup woman.
You stand that glass cliff. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have to resist
from
that.
day one. That's what I saw.
But now that we're getting a good footing and on the up, we need to start encouraging our universities, our HBCUs, to go further and form corporations that the graduates can then go into, so that we have multi-million-dollar corporations and we're hiring ourselves. Because this is a sad picture, that you sisters are portraying, that we have to go into. This is our life. This is, trying to make a living. When you got to go in with a helmet on and a bulletproof vest, So
yeah, it's definitely combat. Thank you, Miss Bay. I appreciate you. Somebody else's hand was up. I'm sorry, I'm doing 2 things at once. Hey, Miss Erica, what do you got for us? How are you today?
I'm well. How are you all? First, I want to say thank you for holding this. I think it's very timely. I just came to a stop. I was on the road headed somewhere for work. And I work for a labor nonprofit. And Miss Higgy, I didn't know that you studied like labor in law school. So we'll have to touch base offline about that. As I want to definitely hear your experience. But I did want to make a comment about what we were talking about, like Black women in the workplace, as far as age is concerned. There's age, guess age, race, and gender. I'm glad to hear that there is something in place for women over a certain age when it comes to severance. I did not know that, so thank you for that information. I had an older Black woman who's a mentor of mine actually tell me something about like my resume, and she told me to stop putting my graduation year on my resume. She said, because sometimes when you're younger, she's like, also you're Black and you're a woman, but also when you're younger, they see your graduation year, they assume that you're younger, that they will pay you less than what they think they should be. They'll pay you less than what you should be receiving. So that was one point I wanted to make. Another point I wanted to make was, I don't know what it is, but like for the most part of my work experience, I've heard people make comments about working under Black women, and unfortunately, I've heard people make more negative comments than positive comments, but that hasn't been my experience. My best managers and people and supervisors were people of color and were women, and 2 of which are still my mentors to this day. And I recognize that may not be the case for everybody, but I don't like when like Black women are pitting themselves against other Black women, because we already have it difficult in the first place. And I think it also kind of hurts when I have had an experience where I was in a workplace with another Black woman, and she was the only other Black woman there that was in a position of power. And the amount of like disdain I felt from her when I came on board was baffling to me. And in my mind, I'm like, I understand she's a director. I'm not expecting special treatment from her, but on some level, I was expecting a moment of I see you, you see me.
Right.
And
Yep.
that really hurt when I didn't receive that from her. But then on the other hand, I've had white women who have tried to rip me to shreds. So I can't even, I try to just try to take things and have people, I guess, in my mind, prove their, what's the word? I need
Prove
to
their
see their character.
trustworthiness,
Yeah,
you need to know
exactly.
that you trust them.
Exactly. And at the base level, just do no harm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that
Can
a
we
lot.
address
Exactly.
that can we address that, ladies, the four of us? What is the experience? Because it hurts more, right? When it's coming
It
from
does.
It
somebody that,
always hurts more. It really does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll wrap up with saying that I am also in the middle of union negotiations myself. We announced a union to our management last December, and we will be finalizing our contract shortly. We are in the middle of election season, so that's kind of delaying us as well because we work directly in that kind of work. And I'm working on a labor commissioner's race right now in North Carolina. So yeah, I'm totally plugged into labor. I was really glad to see that this call was about labor. I'm also someone who formerly worked in HR too. So this was very timely. And thank you for everyone who taught me something and interjected their experiences as well.
and before you go, Erica, very quickly make a pitch because you're looking for workers, aren't you?
Yes, actually, I'm running a field program in Charlotte, North Carolina. I just got here like 30 minutes ago, and I was like just listening in the car. But I'm looking to hire canvassers in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. The going rate is $22 an hour and it's 40 hours a week. So I'm looking for canvassers. If anyone knows people in Charlotte that are looking to get out the vote in North Carolina, well, in Charlotte specifically, please let me know. We're trying to staff up before the 20th of this month. So, yes.
All right. Thank you. Also make sure you put it in the Google group and put it on the Facebook page because you never
Yeah.
know. Somebody's looking for work.
Mhm.
Okay.
But anyway, back to the
Thank you
topic
so
at
much.
hand.
So-
With the amount. So let's talk about the Black woman, the supervisor, and I think we've all had an experience. Go ahead. I'm not gonna dominate. Tara, I think
Oh,
you're shaking.
so what I found is typically when you're met with disdain, that person is so in the trenches with their own experience, they don't have room for you. And they also are concerned that any of the work that they've done could be harmed, even whether it's not a real thought or a real, like, I mean, it's a real feeling because it's theirs, but even if it's not a reality, a lot of times they might think, oh, you're going to come in and undo things that I've worked to establish. A lot of times it's that. I've been the only one for so long. But I'm going to be honest with you, my experience in the workplace has been the inverse, right? You said that your best managers have been Black women. My worst to this day, we had a mostly Black HR department of 23 people. Worst manager in the history of any job I've ever worked at was a Black woman, and it was primarily due to her own narcissism and her own inability to trust, and like she wanted us to do everything, but she wanted the credit for everything, which is difficult when you have 23 people who work for you who are producers and doing things like that. But I've also had really great mentors, but they were white women. So it just depends. Sometimes you don't, every relationship in the workplace is going to be different. And you know, it's just going to be whoever you click with or whoever is invested in that relationship. But I will say that usually if you come into a workplace and the person that you're having an issue with is a Black woman, it's her own insecurities that are driving her to behave that way towards you.
And we're human first, right? So, you know, I know my very first management experience was in 100% Black women. Well, we had one white woman, but we were an all women's team, and we were all Black except one. And it was probably one of the better experiences that I've had. So, you know, it just goes either way. But did you ladies want to hop in on that conversation at all? Michelle or Stacie?
Yeah, I you know, I think you said it best. It's really about think about the relationships when those insecurities set in, whether they're white, Black, whatever, when they're not secure with themselves, that is also when it shows up. And when they're intimidated by your knowledge or skill set, or fearful that you're going to take their role, you want their job, you'll see that show up. I, much like Stacie, have worked in environments where I was the only in the leadership executive role. I was 50 before I had a peer that was of any shade of brown. And so that was a lot of years, you know, to pass, and you work as the only. And, you know, I wasn't enjoying always being the only, and there was always this extra pressure. So I was excited when there was someone, but I will say that at that time, I do remember someone else was very intimidated by her, and, you know, she didn't last long, and had been with the organization, you know, many years, but that person, you know, came and destroyed her, you know, her career. And I saw it happen again, where it was another Black woman was a peer with me, and watched her destroy another Black woman's, you know, career. And so it's hard to watch, hard to see, hard to experience. And because you do have this expectation. I remember when someone arrived, I thought, oh my gosh, finally, it's going to be great. And then I watched them, you know, and be the slayer, right?
Yeah, and I think that one thing that has been helpful to me, I've had those experiences as well. I try to give grace a little bit, because it just understanding, just in doing like some of the research that I've done, is that you think about these women, they've been, like you were saying, Michelle, just been being the only for so long, wearing that armor for so long, having to be defensive for so long, having to be perfect for so long, all of the anxiety and all of those things that they're just walking into every day, and seeing another Black woman come in and not recognize whether or not, okay, are they friend or foe, right? Because I have put all of this stuff together, and I'm coming in and I'm being professional, I'm being this, I'm being that. Are they going to, by their behavior, gonna reflect badly on me? Because we're the only two here right now. We're the only two. Is what they're wearing gonna reflect badly on me? Is how they speak gonna reflect badly on me? And so there's all of that, right? And so yes, learning to trust your gut, but also giving just a little bit of grace, and trying to understand that dynamic, and then maybe just try to tiptoe your way into that person. If you can't reach their heart, then so be it, leave it be. But, you know, recognizing where they're coming from, and protecting yourself too, right? Because you can't just give everything to that, you know, you want to be able to say, oh, you know, this is awesome, we're going to be great, but you know, you just got to hold back a little bit, just a little, you know, so that you're make sure that you're safe, and that that trust that you want to give someone is going to be, you know, you're going to get that back. Exactly. Many times people.
I also want to add to being the manager in these situations. Sometimes there's an expectation. So let's be careful of this. Sometimes you see a Black face, and you know, people are expecting that you're going to do special things, because, you know, and even if I am going to do special things, I need you to act like you didn't notice that I was doing something special, right? But please don't approach me with an expectation that, you know, I'm going to let you be late every day, and I'm not going to say anything to you because you're Black. And that happens a lot too. I am the easiest person to work for. If you need a babysitter, you do not want to work for me. And one thing, I want it to be a happy workplace for everybody. So I'm not, what the Kamala say, I'm not going to do anything special. So yeah, so here I go, right? But don't put your Black supervisor in a position where, like, don't do things that you're not, just because the person is cool, don't do things in front of them that you wouldn't do in front of a white supervisor, because you put them in a position where they have to take action. So be mindful of that too. We have to be careful with that. Miss Charlotte, your hand's been up for a minute, and I need to let these ladies go. So let's wrap it up with Miss Charlotte. What's your question, Miss Charlotte?
My question's a little different. I don't know how to get my real face up here now. Oh well. I have a family member, a young man. He was promoted to supervisor, and he just kept getting successive promotions until he asked to be promoted to a supervisor. They promoted him to a supervisor. And then when things would fall apart, it was like the superhero guy. He was suddenly supposed to do the maintenance and do this and do that. This is a factory worker. After 17 years, he was laid off. And so when they give you a severance package, like for 8 months, can you still file with EEOC if you think you've been retaliated against? Because he would speak his mind, kind of like Helen. And when they ask him about why is this dirty over here, he would say, that's Mike, that's facilities. And when they got in a Teams meeting, if Mike was sitting there, he would say, Mike, what are you going to do? These guys are saying they're shorthanded. Or the mechanic for the other thing, he would ask that person. And it was like he became the uppity person. He was in that position for about 6 months before they laid him off after 17 years. So I really feel it was retaliatory. And but they gave him all the kudos and they gave him the severance pay.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts?
it's because he was holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That if you go into a new position and you know your job and you know what you're supposed to do, and you start holding people accountable and they haven't been held accountable for years, that is a hard path, and it often leads to a severance package and getting laid off because you're doing something they're not used to and they're uncomfortable with. They don't seem to think that they should be accountable, and
Right.
to get rid of you than it is for them to figure out how to make their staff be accountable for these things. So but yes, he absolutely can file his claim. He should. Hopefully he has some documentation, and he can give some clear examples of what happened. But yeah, he absolutely can. As Helen said, you have 300 days. So
Okay, thank you.
For sure. That's the situation that I find myself in right now. I am working for an organization that has been providing services, social services, funding for social service initiatives to Black and Brown communities for almost 40 years. And I am the first non-white executive that they've ever hired. And of course, they hired me with the understanding that I would be bringing another perspective, that, I would be implementing change. And people don't like change. And as much as they'll say they love, I was very open. Anybody who knew me through the interview process, that I was very candid with these people. And I'm like, look, you're looking for somebody to, what did I say, to check the box because it was a diversity job. You're looking for that, or if you're looking for somebody to rubber stamp or somebody to be the beard, which is the cover that people use. Like, I'm not that Black woman. And I was very clear, do not hire me. And so, they hired me. But I've been in this situation before. And, I just think at some point we have to be realistic. And I don't know if you all were on the call when we had Robin DiAngelo. So at the end of the day, and white women specifically will say that they're our allies. And we have to ask ourselves, are they our allies, right? And we get to decide how they show up as our allies. And I think they like us as long as we're in the back seat. They want to look at us in the rearview mirror. They do not want us driving the car. And I don't care what they say or how they come across. At the end of the day, they do not want you driving the car. I remember working for United Airlines in New York City, of all places. This woman had run the domicile there for 35 years in New York City and had never hired a non-white manager. How is that in New York City? Like there's all kinds of people with melanin. And she did that because the company allowed her to do that. And when she did hire non-white people, it was because it was, and this was back in the 90s. So this is how long we've been playing this diversity game, right? Because it was tied to the exiting CEO. Unfortunately, he was exiting when I got hired, but he tied it to their bonus. And that's the only reason they started hiring non-white people. And this is United Airlines, a major employer in a major city. And she had been for 35 years allowed not to hire non-white managers. And you cannot tell me that Black folks and brown people and yellow people didn't apply for those jobs. So, this whole thing, as Michelle was saying, when you're the only, and first of all, when we're in these positions, we need to understand why we're there. Like, you don't sit at that table just for yourself. And if you do, then you're doing a larger harm to your community than are the people who are discriminating against us, because you either need to sit there and speak up or you need to get up. And don't be so happy about being at the table that you're going to compromise who you are, that you're going to go home at the end of the day. You can't sleep, it's affecting your mental health. Like, no, take care of you first. And when we talk about comfort level, your comfort is as important as is the comfort level of the people who you work for and who you work with. So just remember, we got to take care of ourselves in the workplace, and we need to hold each other accountable. So, when Stacie gets that big job, yeah, we're happy. Yay, Stacie got that job. But we need to be saying, hey, Stacie, what have you done for, what difference have you made for Black people in the workplace? And we need to not shy away from that. Everybody else does it.
Right.
You can hire a Latina, you look up the whole friggin' office is Latina. You can hire a gay person, you look up the whole office is gay people. And when Black people do that, everybody notices. And there's a sister, unfortunately, I can't call her name. It's Boca. She has an African name, Boko. I have to look for her name. But I saw her doing an interview, and she intentionally was hiring Black people. And when HR called her to see if there was a problem with the applications that she had been getting, she said, not at all. Not at all. And she also asked, because I think the person might have said something about, you're hiring everybody looks alike. And she's, basically you're hiring all Black people. And she literally said, have you talked to Steve? Because he's been here for 40 years hiring only white people. Did you notice that? And we need to be confident and able to ask those kinds of questions. So what we need to not do is to perpetuate the harm that's being done to us just to keep a job. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to sleep well. And if you do, then I don't know. But anyway, so that's my closing on it. Take care of yourself. So do you ladies want to give a closing remark as well?
Yes. I just thinking about, us women, and then the intersectionality of, being, a woman of color. And I know that, you've got incredible versatility, adaptability, power, and strength. And we effortlessly pivot from leader to caregiver to innovator to, ambassador of change. And we're steering through all these high levels of pressure and stress, and with the utmost resilience, and grace. And I know that you get tired because we're often targeted, sometimes bullied, other times disrespected, overutilized, undervalued, and underappreciated. And we are still fighting for what we've already fought for. We are still fighting. I always say they want our rhythm, but not our blues. They like our gifts, but they don't like our presence. You're often invited and definitely not welcome. But try to surround yourself with people who want you to be the very best version of yourself and can empower you. And then when you reach the top, then you be the woman that makes someone else's burden, much lighter. And just be the person that inspires another woman we know how hard it is. We absolutely know. Many of us are in roles and we are trying to dismantle things while we're experiencing it at the same time. But just hold hands with someone and go along that journey together and just be there. And don't go through that journey alone, even though you think you can. You don't have to.
Great. And for me, just take care of yourselves. And I put if anybody's interested in my research, I uploaded it to the chat. It's very dense. Go to chapter 4 and 5 if you want to know like the in-depth stuff, like the conversations that I had with those other executive women. Take care of yourselves though. Tara.
I mean, so the only thing I would add is if you have, like, you have to know your organization, you have to know your team members. So if there are team members with who you can work change through the organization with, like there's some people who can help you and will help you. And sometimes you all have to think and be creative about how you get the things done. But if you can work and build your own ally system within the organization, you can get things done and it takes the burden off of you. Because if, like, for us, we all work and use the same terms. So we always say, like, oh, then we're not holding people accountable. Like, so every time anybody talks to anybody in HR and they're saying, oh, they're not doing this, well, your managers are not holding them accountable. Like, we all use the same language and we talk about it amongst ourselves about how we're going to approach things. And then, the ones that we're trying to get more change with, we figure out how are we going to get that change and work together. It helps if you can work in an ally. If you're and sometimes that means you got to cross. You got to cross groups, cultures, departments, everything. Sometimes you have to, if you get the opportunity and you know that somebody has the same feeling, has experienced the same thing, even if they don't look like you can work with them to get it done because it means something to them. And the second it becomes pressing to the white guy, it's going to be an issue that you can resolve in the organization. So you want them to experience the things that people are saying organically if you can help it. If you can get them in a situation where they see or feel or understand what's going on, then you can get help from that person. So it's not always helpless. It is there are ways to do it, but it takes patience. And that's why that self-care is so important. Because every day you're still frustrated, but it's getting better. You're working slowly, but you're getting it done. But it's an exercise in patience. So yeah, the self-care is the most important thing, especially with your mental health and your resilience and your health overall.
Absolutely. And if you see somebody in the workplace trying to make a difference, get out of their way.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of their way. If you don't
They don't
have
even get a help. Give them some hands to help. Whatever.
Right. Yeah. But don't be an obstacle for them, right? Because at the end of the day, whatever they're fighting for is going to help everybody. And and they will look to pit us against one another. So you will be used to do that. Don't allow that to happen. So if I don't agree with, what Stacie's doing, I don't have a negative thing to say about it. And I'm not going to act like when I see Stacie in the workplace, she's not a pariah. She's my sister. And I still say, hey, Stacie, how you doing? So don't let people think that they can pit us against one another. And because at the end, we're all going to suffer. I'm saying these things, I'm single, I don't have children. When I eat, my whole family eats, I recognize that. So I recognize that I may be able to say and do some things that other people may not be. They might want to say them, but they can't say them or for whatever reason. So let me talk, and you don't become my enemy. And I'm saying me, but I'm just saying whoever is that person that's speaking. And you know what? And when I get a position, I need you to hold me accountable. I worked for a Black woman once at MCI. That woman never hired a Black manager in her life. The only Black people she hired was secretaries. and they hailed her because she was the first Black director. Like, and and I'm sure she got local awards from the local church and the NAACP. We need to ask, like, everybody that we're celebrating, why are we celebrating them? And we really need to say, in the words of the famous Janet Jackson, what have you done for us lately? And nobody would know that. Nobody would know. She actually, the same woman wanted me. I had an MBA. They were trying to promote a white girl with a GED to be my supervisor. I'm like, I'm not reporting to her. And I went all the way, and she told me what I could do to get the job the next time. I don't care. But guess what? This time I'm not reporting to her. And I went completely over her head right up to the vice president. And I will tell you, I was not an attorney. Again, I was willing to lose my job, but I wasn't reporting to some white girl with a GED, and I had a goddamn MBA. Wasn't happening. So, and that's what we've done in the past. We've taken the job, we've trained Mister's kid, and next thing you know, we don't have a job. We don't have to do that anymore. There are legal recourses available to us, and do not be shy about using them. So on that note, I'm going to stop preaching. I'm going to thank everybody for coming to talk with us today. Hopefully everybody got some information or learned something that you didn't know before. We will be doing more of this. And I'm just going to take us off a spotlight so we can just do our thing and sign off and call it a day. Thank you, ladies. This is the first of
Thank
many.
you.
We're going to be
Yes, thank you
doing a
so
lot of
much.
this. So let me see if everybody can unmute and we can do our sign off. We can do that real quick. For those who know, when I say, let me see, let me take myself off spotlight. Okay, so ladies, when Black women gather,
Amazing things happen.
thank you for another amazing afternoon. And I hope again that you will come again. We'll meet again next week on a whole new topic. I'm going to stop
Thank
recording
you.
right now. If you want to hang out, we can talk for a few more minutes about just other things. Thank you, Michelle, Tara, and Stacie. And we are a team. We will be doing a lot more of this. So I appreciate you, ladies.
Appreciate you too.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.